So I want to say this real quick. This is kind of off subject, but still relevant to me. This bowl was my mom's bowl. Talk about passing things down from generation to generation. So my mom used to make her biscuits in this bowl. My mom passed away in 2002. That's my alarm. That's my alarm in the garden. My mom passed away in 2002. And I asked her before she passed, I said, Mom, if I can have anything that's yours, I want that bowl. That's the only thing I really wanted was her bowl. And I had to fight my sister for it, but I got it. My daddy made my sister give up the bowl because Mama said I can have the bowl. And I use this bowl often, and I always remember her when I use it. So moms, if y'all got something that grandma had or great grandma had, pass it down to your children and tell them the story about it as well. Tell the story and leave the legacy behind. So we're gonna pick some peppers, and I'm just gonna put some jalapenos is all I really want to pick, if I can find. So here's the difference in pepper leaves. If you look here, you'll see how big these are. These are actually bell peppers. Okay, these are really, really big leaves, and I probably should take some of the leaves off so we can get more fruit out of that. But nevertheless, these are peppers, bell peppers. Same thing over here. You see there's big, nice bell peppers. Ooh, I need to probably harvest some of those. Bell peppers there. They have a yellow flower as opposed to a white flower. And the white flower you'll see that has chili. So these are the chili peppers. We've harvested some of these already. To put in the dehydrator. So these are still here to grow. But if you look over there, sweetheart, there's still some that we can even harvest now. We really can. But I'm gonna leave them there because I can get those a little bit later on. So let's move over here to where some of the jalapenos are. The jalapenos, their flower looks a lot like the other one in terms of the white flower. You see there, but I think the leaves still look a little bit different. Can you pull a leaf from over there, Makai? Just pull one from that plant right there. You can tell the difference from this leaf to that one. This one seems to be a little bit more viney to me anyway. That's just my observation. I could be totally wrong. Just my observation. Here are some jalapenos. There's not a lot of big ones still, but if you can see the difference here, see how much wider this is on the stem and how narrow it is as opposed to, go look at that one. These are a lot more straight. There's even some bigger ones there. Look back there. There's some bigger ones there, much more straight. You may have to pull it out so it can be seen better. There you go. They're a lot more straight, where the jalapenos has a lot more weight at the top. It's a lot more meaty, if you will. I'm going to use the word meaty. So we have really two different kind of peppers here, but these here are jalapeno. One way you can tell is by where the stem is. It's much wider at that base as opposed to the chili pepper. The chili pepper, the stem is a little bit smaller, and also where the base is, if you will, it's also a little bit narrow, so it's not going to be as wide. You can see here, this is a really nice size chili. But if you look at that jalapeno, there's a distinct difference even in the stem. So if you're out shopping or in the garden, you're not sure, that's one way to tell the difference. Other than the leaf that's in the garden. And maybe we're going to pick some of these because we're actually going to can some of these for just some jalapenos. I love them. Pickled jalapenos. We can get some more in here. Oh yeah. There are. Oh, the sun, finally. Now, people say you shouldn't pick stuff when the garden is wet, so I'm going to stop right there because I don't want to ruin my garden. And when this dries out, I'll pick some more. So that's something else I've learned from an old farmer. Can y'all hear the thunder? Y'all hear the thunder? Hear it roar? Old farmer up here says when the garden is wet, that you shouldn't pick because the water will get into the stem and then it'll make your vegetables rot. Who knew, right? And so it makes sense. So I'm going to leave this, being that it just got through raining a few minutes ago, and when it dries, I'll come back out and pick some more. Hopefully enough to can. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Titus 2, where we are here to teach the young women, as it says in scripture, teaching them how to be chaste keepers at home and all the like. We're going to do some canning today. One of the things that we're going to teach the ladies on how to can, and we're just doing something simple today, some jalapenos. So this is spring water, so I don't have to go out and buy any water. So I'm just going to rinse this out, and then per the instructions, we're going to do 2 cups of water, 2 cups of vinegar, and we're going to go ahead and add that in now. So right here, we're adding in that vinegar that we were talking about. I just want you all to make sure that you use apple cider vinegar or distilled white vinegar, and it needs to be at least at a 5% acidity, okay? Because there's some foods that don't have any acid in it, and you need to add that to it in order to get the botulism and or any other bacteria from forming in your food. One more thing to remember as well is that you're using equal parts vinegar to equal parts water. Okay, so we're gonna have her, this is the All-American canner, by the way. I think it's a 921, I have to look it up for sure, but nevertheless, it's not the biggest All-American canner, but it is one that is really, really good. It's gonna last a long time. You don't need the rubber gaskets with this one, which is why I love it, because you don't have to do any replacement parts. So this is just a good tool to have. So we're gonna fill this water up just to that line right there. I learned from Homestead Hart, shout out to you, Mrs. Hart, for the base of the recipe. However, I learned from a different YouTube channel, I don't remember who that was, where you put a piece of garlic in each jar. I'm going to do that because to me, it just elevates it just a little bit more. And if you like a little bit of spice and you like garlic, this will be the recipe for you. And then we're going to finish cutting up these jalapenos, and we're going to go ahead and fill the jars up. Canning is one of those things that our great grandmamas and great aunties and all those things, all those people did back in the day to preserve food. If you have a garden, you're going to have a way to preserve your food. There's no way you can eat up all the produce in a week's time unless you have a whole lot of family members. So you have to have a way to preserve your food. This is just one of those ways that I'm doing with the jalapenos. So we've got the hot water going in the canner. We've got the brine going for the jars. So everything will be heated at the same temperature. You do not want to put cold jars in a hot bath, okay? It has to be temperature controlled. So if you're going to use cold jars, just don't turn the water on in the canner. Have everything heated up at the same time. But if you got hot brine, which is what we're doing today, you want to use hot water in your canner. Of course, we're not de-seeding these because what is a jalapeno if it's not hot? What are we talking about? So we're definitely going to keep the seeds in all of these. Okay, so all you're going to do is fill up the jar. Start with the little ones, if you will, so we'll make sure to get those done. I'm going to go over here and stir up this brine. Now we have our Coty sister Kaya. She is just going to fill up the jars, and her twin sister Mikhail is putting a piece of garlic in each jar. If you have large pieces of garlic as opposed to small ones, put those large pieces inside your bigger jar, of course, right? That just makes sense. Yeah. Leah, how's that brine over there looking? Good. Is it boiling?
Yes, ma'am.
You can turn it off. And that's one of the things in prepping when you're canning. You always want to have more than you think you're going to need because you just never know. And if you don't have enough jars, then you kind of have to stop, sanitize them, and do that. So just have more than enough.
I'm going to put one of the smaller ones in this. Try to put this one up.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a real good idea. Yep, that was very smart. Did you just see what she did? That was a smart move. So we didn't have enough to fill a larger jar. So she just took one of the smaller jars and filled up the jar that she was using. That's what you have to do when you're canning, just improvise. Nowadays with ball, they say you don't have to boil your lids, and the reason they say that you had to at one point was to kind of soften up the glue that's around here. But being that it's going to be in water and it's going to heat up anyway, they have omitted that part out. So you no longer have to boil your lids, but you do want to clean your lids. So we're going to take a minute, make sure these lids are clean and sterilized before we put them on our thing. So let's do that real quick. So we have our hot broth. All right, so we got the salt in there, and we're also going to do a quarter. I'm not quite sure how much of this to use. It's pickle crisp granules, and it doesn't say on the directions as to how many to use, but I'm just going to go ahead and put 1/4 of a teaspoon in each one of these jars, even the small jar, and hopefully, I'm hoping that it will be okay. It's just a crisper so that your pickles stay nice and firm. And once Kaya is done with that, then we're going to go ahead and start putting the liquid into our jars. Thank you, sweetheart. If you want to bring this over closer, you can. And just kind of remember to stir it up a little bit, because you want to definitely get some of that turmeric. Turmeric takes a few minutes to kind of dissolve. So there you go. I'm sorry. But this comes with the kit. So what you have to do is you have to go around the jar to take the bubbles out. And the reason you have to take the bubbles out is because when you are canning, the liquid doesn't get in between everything. So you have to make sure that you move things around, because a lot of times that liquid will settle. And when you do the debubbling, you'll know if you don't have enough liquid, then you can add more liquid to it. So that's the purpose of having this debubbler, so that you have exactly the right amount of liquid in your jar. So you can see it actually did go down just a little bit, but that's not a big deal, but we can add some more liquid to that. Another thing you have to do when you're canning is have some vinegar standing by, especially when you're canning greasy foods like chicken or beef. For those of you who eat pork, we don't eat pork, we eat kosher. But for those of you that do and may watch this video, any kind of meat that you're canning, especially the edges of your jar. Okay, this is also a good time to make sure that there's no nicks on your jar, meaning that there are no break in the glass. Because if you have a break in your glass at the rim, it's not going to seal, right? So you have to make sure that those are done. Good rule of thumb is to really check it before you put all this stuff in there, but I know these are good jars, so that's not going to be an issue. So once you do that, you put this little tool in. Now, this is cool. I didn't mention this. This is a magnet. So back in the day, remember I talked about when Ball said you had to boil your lids? Well, you couldn't get it out of the hot water, so you take this out with the hot, take this little tool and get your lids out of the hot water, so your hands is not in that. So that was a tool that came in with the kit, but I don't normally use it anymore. So it's just something that, if you have it, that's what it's for. Okay? So if you don't mind going ahead and putting those on, and then when you put your lids on, your tops, I guess you call it, finger tight. That's it right there. Nope, that's it. Just finger tight. You don't want to screw it too hard, because you have to allow that water to evaporate that's in there, or it could bust inside the canner. So you just want to go finger tight, and that's as far as you want to go with that. Just also want to point out when you're canning, there is a, I'm just going to see if I can pull this up real quick. If you would take a shot in there, Leah, there is a piece of metal that has to go at the bottom of your canner, whether you're water bath canning or whether you are pressure canning. Okay, so your glass jar should not be touching the heat element of this because they can actually explode. So they have that little piece in there so that it's just a barrier. Okay, I think back in the day when they did this kind of stuff, sometimes they would just put a towel under the pot, or in the pot, and put the glass jars on top of the towel, again, so that it's not touching the perimeter of the canner. So just remember that if you don't have one of those, you have options. Okay, get you a nice towel, put it on there, and then use it that way. So we're gonna I'm gonna take some of this hot steaming water out of this jar. Because we're in training mode, it took us a little bit longer because I'm teaching and as we go. So I'm gonna take some of this hot water out and I'm gonna add cold water back in just to bring the temperature down inside that jar, because we've got cool jars now that's gonna go inside this canner, and I don't want those jars to explode. Okay, so if that makes any sense to you, that's why I'm doing this, okay? Yep, it's okay if the jars touch, but it should not touch the rims. Okay. So that's fine. And actually, you can even, where's that thing at? You can even put one in the middle. Like you can put one of those small ones in the middle, and that way that gives you even more space. You see that, Pam? That gives you even more space. Okay, so All American, there is this here. Okay. That arrow has to match up with that. Perfect. So once you've done that, you'll want to make sure that you hold the lug nuts on opposite sides, and then you want to screw that down as best you can. Make sure that you get a good seal, because if it's lopsided in any way and it's not leveled, the pressure will not build up in the pressure cooker and you're not going to get a good seal. So we are going to let this come up to a roaring boil, and when we see the steam come up out of here, it has to steam for a steady 10 minutes. It's going to take a while for that pressure to build up inside this jar. Okay, a lot of people are scared of pressure canning because of the pressure that's in the jar, but if you know what you're doing, there's no need to fear, right? So the pressure that's building up in your jar, it is going to eventually start to escape. So 10 minutes, you need to monitor this. Once it starts a steady stream, start timing it for 10 minutes. After that 10 minutes, then you put your gauge on here so that the steam can now stay in the pressure cooker, okay, and cook like it should cook. This is the gauge that you get with the All American, and it has 3 different sizes, numbers on here. There's a 5, there's a 10, and a 15, and these are used for the pressure for where you live. So for my altitude, I have to use a 10 gauge or a 15 gauge. I have to be somewhere around there. So I go ahead and use a 10, and that's okay. All right. So once I start seeing that steam and it's been 10 minutes, then I'm going to put this gauge right here, and then it'll do what it needs to do.
I see the steam breaking.
Mm-hmm. See how it's breaking? So you want to get a steady stream where there's no break. So and it'll be real forceful. So when it starts, you'll definitely be able to tell the difference. And that's where we're going to put our weight on there. Okay? You see it starting to, we got a steady stream here. See the difference there? Everybody's really, it's no break. Although, can you see that difference? Right? Yep. So now we have a steady stream. We talked about that steady stream coming out. It needs to be 10 minutes timed. 10 minutes. Once you start seeing that, once your 10 minutes is over, that's when you can put your pressure gauge on. And then once your pressure in your pot gets to the pressure that you want based on your monitor here, that's when you start timing it again. Because then that's when your cook time is. Okay, so now your cook time is, depending on what you're cooking. For this, I'm gonna do 15 minutes. Okay. So now we're gonna put our weight. We're gonna do 10 gauge weight because that's what I need for my altitude, anywhere between 15. I'm gonna do 10 because I really don't need 15. So I'm gonna put 10 on. And here's the catch to this. In a few minutes, a lot of canners will start to move. On the All-Americans, not necessarily so. What you're going to need to look is at this temperature gauge right here. This temperature gauge is going to go up. As soon as it reaches to your 11% or whatever pressure point you want to monitor. You want to turn your fire down if you need to, or you want to monitor it so it doesn't go above that. Because once it starts to go above your altitude or above your pressure point, that's when you run into trouble. So make sure you monitor that. And sometimes I have to turn my fire down all the way on low just to keep it at that temperature that I want, or at that gauge pressure that I want, which is somewhere between 11 and 15. Never want to go over 15. So I try to keep it at 11 as much as I can, and I can do that with this canner. Once you get the pressure up to the place that you want it to be, so I want this pressure gauge to get up to 11. That's when I start the next timing. Okay, so now I'm going to time it at that point for 15 minutes because that's how long I want these jalapenos to cook. I want them to do 15 minutes in the pressure canner, but it has to reach a certain temperature inside the canner, if that makes sense. So once again, once that pressure point gets up to 11, right there, I hope you can see that. Once I get there, I'm going to monitor and I'm going to start my timer for 15 minutes, okay? So as you can see now, that pressure gauge is up to around 11 or 12. You can see that. So now I'm going to go ahead and start my timer, and I'm going to give this 15 minutes to actually pressure pan or pressure cook. Boom. 15 minutes, we'll turn the fire off and let it cool down. If this starts to get higher, I'm going to turn my fire down, which I see it starting to rise. You can see it rising. See, it was a little bit closer to 10. Now it's moving more closer to the 15. So I'm going to lower my fire all the way to medium and see if it'll get steady. If it doesn't steady, then I'm going to back it down some more. That's the thing about pressure canning, is that you have to watch your gauge, because if it gets too hot, you got way too much pressure in your pressure canner. So I'm going to bring this down all the way down to low, because I don't want that much pressure in there. Our 15 minutes is up. We can hear the timer going off. Timer didn't go off, but it's telling me that it's over. I'm just going to turn this off. And I'm just going to let it cool off on its own. I don't have to do anything. It's going to automatically start cooling down. You can hear it. And once that pressure is all the way down, I'm going to leave this gauge on, by the way. Don't take the gauge off because the pressure is still in there. You don't want to release that because that could be a whole problem. Leave your gauge on until this completely comes back to 0. Okay? It will take a little while, but it's okay. When it goes down, then you can take it off, and then we'll show you what to do after that. Okay. So, Leah, if you would come around and see that the temperature is all the way down to 0, as we talked about earlier. So now it is safe to go ahead and take the temperature gauge off, or the weight gauge off, and you're hearing a little bit of pressure, and that's okay because all the pressure is now technically out of the canner. And so then it's okay to go ahead and start loosening up. For me, loosening up these here bolts. Now here's something that's very crucial when you're canning. You'll want to make sure that you don't want to look like, oh, how did it go? You don't want to do that because you're going to have a real serious steam face bath if you do that. So just take a few minutes to let the steam come out. Feel that steam? Take a few minutes and just let the steam come up and out. And just let it sit like that for a little bit until it cools, which is fine. And once it gets a little bit of steam out, then you can take them out of the container. You just out of the canner. You just don't want to put your face over that real fast. And if you look in there and see, they're all ready to go.
Okay, so now I'm just taking the cans out. They're hot, so I'm using my thing.
Okay. So I don't want to over. When you take them out of the canner, you normally will hear a pop. Did y'all hear some popping going on when you took them out?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
It might have happened when it popped because it's been in there for so long. But normally you hear them go ping, ping. That's when you know they are sealed. You can push down on these. If you have a bubble, if there's like a bubble and you can press it down, it's not sealed.
Okay.
If it doesn't go down, then you've got a good seal. Okay. You leave the lid on overnight. Okay, you can look at these and see. These are still bubbling. You see, they're still cooking. They're not done. Do you see the bubbles coming up? They're still doing their thing. So leave them overnight, and the next day you can take the lids off and then store them.
Okay.
And store them. When you open them is when you need to refrigerate them. But these are just like you would buy at the store. Your canned jars, they're good for 3, 4, 5 years. Okay. So.